Call to order, councillors. It is 9 o'clock. So welcome everyone to the August 2020 Kempsey Shire Council meeting. We are able to welcome back members of the public into the chamber this morning. We have one person in the chamber, and we have the media, Ruby from the Argus, joining us today. So thank you for coming. COVID-19 still poses a risk for public gatherings, and entry to the public gallery today required registration and a limited number of people at one time, but I think we well and truly cover that. Today's meeting is again provided by Zoom to councillors, and Councillor Horval and Councillor Morris are zooming in. And in the chambers we have Councillor Baxter, Councillor Saul, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Shields and Councillor Williams, along with our General Manager Craig Milburn, Director Robert Fish, Director Stephen Mitchell, Manager for Governance Daniel Thorogood, and welcome to Debbie Berry, who's joining us today, and our Manager Communications, Lyndall Harper. All phones and devices need to be turned to silent, and our council meetings are open to the public and live streamed to allow people to observe council in the decision-making process. And I need to inform all present that your attendance is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and your voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream, or any other visual and or sound recordings of meeting requires prior permission, and that does need to be a unanimous decision of council. Due to managing COVID restrictions, we ask all members of the public to leave the building after the item they are here to listen to be dealt with by council. There will be no public morning tea this morning, and council will break at an appropriate time to allow all councillors and staff a short break. Welcome councillors, General Manager, Executive Team and staff. Welcome also to anyone who has joined us by live stream this morning to the August 2020 Council meeting of Kempsey Shire Council. And again, I remind councillors that voting will be called by any dissent vote. Non-dissent vote is an affirmative, and abstaining vote is recorded as a vote against. There's no dissent votes, the motion will be passed unanimously. And if you could also remember to please activate your microphones when you've been acknowledged to speak. And we will begin the meeting in the usual way at item number 1 with the opening prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And with our acknowledgement of country, Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Dunghutti people. Item number 3 is the apologies or applications for leave of absence. We do have one apology from Councillor Sumi.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do I have? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Saul. We accept the apology of Councillor McGinn. Any dissent? There's no dissent. I don't think that's unanimous. Item number 4 is the confirmation of minutes. We have a recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting dated the 28th of July be confirmed.
Move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Saul, and it's been seconded by Councillor Patterson. And we have a question from Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Technology at us. I'm sorry about that. I'd like to move an amendment, please, Madam Mayor.
And your amendment is?
But at the end of point 4, confirmation of minutes, add Councillor Horval moved the following amendment, which was accepted by the mover, Councillor Patterson, into the original motion. The acknowledgement of country be amended to, on behalf of the Kempsey Shire community, I acknowledge the Dunghutti people, the original inhabitants of this ancient land, and pay our respects to the Dunghutti elders and Aboriginal people, and Council acknowledge that this meeting is held on the traditional lands of the Dunghutti people. Further, amend 7.1 that the resolution be amended by changing 3H to point 4. And in the matter of urgency, add, despite 9.4 of the Code of Meeting Practice, Councillor Horval was not allowed to, by the Mayor, with advice from the General Manager and Mr Thorogood, to speak to the urgency motion. An excerpt from the KRC Code of Meeting Practice 9.3. Despite the clause 9.1, business may be considered at a meeting of the council even though due notice of the business has not been given to the councillors if A motion is passed to have the business considered at the meeting, and B, the business to be conducted is ruled by the chairperson to be of great urgency on the grounds that it requires a decision by the council before the next scheduled ordinary meeting of the council. 9.4. A motion moved under clause 9.3a can be moved without notice. Despite clauses 10.2 and 10.3, only the mover of a motion referred to in clause 9.3a can speak to the motion before it is put. The urgency motion submitted but was not shared with councillors was 1. Council will extend the time for submissions on the Point Plumber road sealing review of environmental factors to Friday, 14th of August, to enable those community members who have not yet been able to make a submission to do so. 2. By Friday, 31st of July, Council will distribute in Crescent Head 20 copies of the review for people who do not have access to the internet. I so move that amendment, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? It's been seconded.
I'll speak to the motion if I may, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
I move the first bit about the fact that I created the motion about your wonderful speech about acknowledgement of country, Madam Mayor, and I thought that should be acknowledged, that I'd taken the time to type that up from listening to the transcript or listening to the video, and I accept that the mover, Councillor Patterson, accepted it into the original motion, so I'm just putting it there as a fact of what happened at the meeting. In 7.1, resolution be amended by changing 3H to 0.4. 3H refers to everything in 3, which it is part of. So it's called a continuing loop, and that loop is what causes computers to crash. We don't want our motions to crash, so it needs to be changed to 0.4. In the matter of urgency, I accept that when the General Manager and Mr Thorogood said I didn't have a right to speak, I actually asked that question, and the recording shows that, and I accepted that I didn't have a right to speak. But on examining the Code of Meeting Practice, it definitely says that the mover of a motion referred to can speak to the motion before it is put. And I wasn't allowed to, and that's an error, and I want that put into the minutes. And I also would like to put into the minutes, and that's what I've done, is that the motion I emailed through to the council before I put it, the urgency motion, had 2 parts, and councillors never got to hear the second part, and they may have reconsidered their vote against hearing it if they had known that I had moved the second part, which was trying to give people who don't have internet access a chance to participate in the submissions and feedback on the review of environmental factors. So I would ask all councillors to support this amendment, which shows what happened at our council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Horval. I'm going to... No one's got their light on. I'm going to move the amendment. Is there any dissent on the amendment? Are you for the amendment?
Madam Mayor, I can't see who's voting. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have the casting vote. In this instance, I will go with the amendment. So the amendment has been carried. All in favour of the amendment? The motion. It is now the motion.
In favour or dissent of?
Any dissent on the motion?
You said in favour first, that's all.
Sorry. There's no dissent. It's been carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any disclosures of interest?
Madam Mayor?
Councillor Patterson, and then I'll take Councillor Horval.
No, Madam Mayor, I was wondering whether just asking a question of you, if I may. Disclosures of interest that were put to the public forum yesterday or last evening, would they carry over to this meeting? Or is that how it works?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, they do carry over, but we ask the councillors just to disclose again by way of the public record.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
So thank you, Councillor Patterson, and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I disclose a pecuniary significant interest in item 9.4, and I will be leaving the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to declare a significant pecuniary interest in 9.2 Kemp Street Master Plan, as I am the president of one of the major users there. And I would also like to declare a non-significant interest in 9.1, as the public forum speaker yesterday is on my caseload at work.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. There's no other declarations of interest. Item 6, which is items passed by exception.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Shields. Is there any questions or removals? Councillor Patterson, you got questions? Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I will save time and withdraw all of them except 9.11.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Baxter.
Should I ask questions on these points now, or when
they're all going to be dealt with individually. So, except for 911, if you have any questions on 911, which is the key performance indicators.
No.
Thank you. Any dissent from the motion now, which includes the only one that is now being removed is 9.11. All in favour?
Madam Mayor, could I ask a question?
Any dissent?
Can I
yes.
ask a question on that?
Yes, certainly.
Just a question about why we have a block that we move to vote on. Is that so that we can move those motions all at once and we can ask questions, possibly at the briefing session that we have the night before the meeting?
And you can also ask questions here. Generally speaking, the reasons why they're being removed is because people are either going to vote against them or they want to move amendments on them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
Is there any dissent on the items passed by exception? There's no dissent. That's been passed unanimously. Item number 7.1 is the Local Government New South Wales 2020 Annual Conference. And this is a report that comes to Council annually. That is to have our preliminary registrations in so that we do take advantage of the early bird offer that is there, and we can start making arrangements for the councillors that wish to attend. As you know, we have 3 voting delegates, so we need to have 2 voting delegates for the conference to be determined. And we also need to have an indication of any other councillors that wish to attend for endorsement for registration. And suggestions for councillors for motions to be submitted to the conference must be submitted to the General Manager in writing by the 27th of August. I don't need a seconder. Is there any questions or is there any dissent from the motion? But we also need to have an indication for item number 2 in the recommendation and for number 3. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a number of amendments to your mayoral minute, if I may.
I'm sorry, Councillor Horval, we can't hear you.
My microphone's on. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'd like to move a number of amendments to your mayoral minute, if I may, Madam Mayor. The first one is, because there's no urgency, I'm moving that we add to point 2 of your recommendation that we put at the end at September Council. So it would read that for 2 other voting delegates to the conference be determined at September Council. And then I'd add at point 4, Council is to organise a workshop for all councillors to decide on what motions can be put forward to the conference for consideration. Any motions selected are to be ratified by September Council before submitting them by the closing date of midnight, Monday the 28th of September. That's my amendment, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment?
Okay.
It's been seconded by Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I'm moving this because I don't think we need to rush through. The closing date is the 28th of September. We need to get any motions together and bring them back to be ratified by council, and we can do that at the September council meeting. The actual event is in November, so it's a long way off, and we need to work on motions. Over the past 4 years on council, I've always been interested in what we can do to contribute to local government New South Wales policy, and there are a number of things I have in mind that we could put up. But I would certainly want to be able to put it together with the help of my fellow councillors to make sure that we have the best possible wording and facts behind the ideas that could be made. And therefore, I'm saying we should have that workshop in the next 2 weeks, if that's all possible, and Mr. General Manager could organise it. And then we could put those motions through at the next council meeting and ratify them, which is a requirement that's it's ratified by council, and we have to prove how it's been ratified. And if we don't ratify them at a council meeting, the General Manager or the Mayor may ratify them with a letter, which is an interesting idea. But I think if we go to local government New South Wales with motions, we should have this whole support of all councillors. And that's why I'm putting this up, that we have a workshop and we make sure that everyone can contribute and come up with the best possible solutions. Once they are ratified, we can put them, and we've got time after the September Council to make sure that they arrive with local government New South Wales. So I don't see a great urgency. And in the past, we haven't put in, as I said, in the last 4 years, we haven't put any motions or any contribution towards policy of local government New South Wales, even though we have a major contribution of councillors and staff or the General Manager attending the council of the local government conference. So I'm just asking everyone to take a deep breath, support this amendment so that we can make sure we do our best in contributing to policy for benefit our Shire.
General Manager.
Through Madam Mayor, just in relation to point 4, the way the recommendation is written is quite deliberate. It allows councillors, because as Councillor Horval said, the council hasn't chosen to put any motions up previously. It's written so that motions suggested by councillors can come to me by the 27th of August, and that's actually as detailed in the report. We would then actually be bringing those to the 2nd of September councillor briefing so they can be discussed, should we get any. So if there isn't any, there's no point in holding a workshop. If we get some, then we can actually discuss those on the 2nd of September. That allows us then the time to put them to the September council meeting and meet the required deadline.
Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Just a question, Madam Mayor, probably to the General Manager. The suggestions by councillors for motions, is that all it needs to be, just a suggestion, not a motion prepared, but a suggestion of a particular thread that needs to be fleshed out in that workshop?
We would like
What
something
sort of
with a
detail
bit of
is
substance, so not
required?
just a one or two liner. It would be something with a bit of substance. The wording might not be exact, but it would be something along the lines of, a motion such as these sorts of things, and for these types of reasons, not dissimilar to what you do with a notice of motion to council normally, but allowing for the fact that we would then workshop it and it may actually get changed.
Councillor Horville, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just following up on what the General Manager said, and it would be quite okay if, as the General Manager said, we discussed them and considered it kind of a workshop at the General Manager's briefing. This just formalises the fact that we would be having a workshop. It also puts forward the idea that we can select who would be speaking. Would that be a problem, Mr. General Manager, that if we pass this, it would still happen the way you said?
It just ties you into having a workshop that would be totally unnecessary if there are no motions.
Well, thank you, Mr. General Manager. I still think it'd be possible.
He's answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have any dissent on the amendment? The amendment has been lost. We go back to the original motion. All in favour of the motion? Oh, sorry. I've got people in here now, so I've gone back to the old way. Any dissent on the original motion?
Madam Mayor, could I ask you a question, if I may, please?
I've already put it to the vote.
I thought you were putting the
Are you
amendment.
dissenting or?
No, I was asking you a question, Madam Mayor, because you're in charge of this. I'd just like to ask a question of you, if I may.
I'm being advised by the councillors here that it's already been put to the vote and there's no more debate.
Well, I would like you to bring it back, if you could, Madam Mayor, because this is a very simple question.
There's no appetite here to bring it back. So
well, I move that we...
the matter's been dealt with, in actual fact.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to reconsider it because there was a delay in the sound and coming to me, and I didn't know that the vote was on. So I'd like to re-vote on it before
So you want to vote against it?
No, I want to vote, Madam Mayor, but I want to ask you a very simple question.
We've already voted. We're moving on. Before we move on, we now need to have the two other voting delegates.
Madam Mayor, I move dissent.
I'm sorry?
I'm moving dissent.
And the dissent is?
That you haven't listened to what I have said. You have decided that my vote was not to be counted because I did not vote. And I did not hear you say, because of the technical problems, I did not hear you say we're putting the motion. So there's a delay here and people speaking over each other. There was noise from the chamber and I didn't hear that you were putting a vote.
So you're voting against it. We have moved on. Well, we're still...
No, I'm moving dissent against your ruling that we're moving on, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I would like...
Have you spoken to it? Have you finished speaking to it?
No, I haven't, Madam Mayor.
Keep speaking.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like councillors to consider that in the openness and fairness that I get a chance to ask my question and then get to vote. And I did not vote. I did not know there was a vote on. If you're telling me that I did know the vote was on and didn't vote, then you're saying that I'm not acting with integrity. And I find that an amazing idea, that I'm not doing my best on behalf of Kempsey Shire. And I do my best all the time. So I'm asking council to say to the mayor that we should resubmit the vote and I get a chance to ask a very simple question.
Thank you. We're all in the chambers here and I do acknowledge the fact that there is technical problems, but there is a motion of dissent. So I have to put that to the vote. Councillors...
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
The point of order is?
Well, under the code of meeting practice, if I move dissent, there's only two people allowed to speak.
That's myself and you have spoken. I have spoken. So now I'm putting it to the vote.
But Madam Mayor, you haven't addressed anything I've said in my dissent. You just said we're going to vote. That's not a reply to what I said. That's my point of order. I would suggest that you speak why you...
I don't have to reply. We've heard what you've had to say. In my view, I have done the right thing. I haven't questioned your integrity. We had moved on. We had taken the vote. And that was the consensus of what was the feeling in the room here. No one else had that feeling. Councillor Morris may have. I'm not sure. He's doing this remotely as well. So I am now going to put the motion of dissent. Do councillors agree with the motion of dissent? Is anyone against the motion of dissent? It's lost.
Madam Mayor, could I know the vote, please?
The vote was all in the chamber voted against the motion, and Councillor Morris
Didn't vote.
Didn't vote. He abstained. So,
Madam Mayor, can I ask
clear to you?
Madam Mayor, can I ask a quick question, please?
Yes, certainly.
In the interests of making things flow more easily, because I must admit from my end, it came probably about half a second after we voted on the amendment to say that we are now moving the motion. I believe there should be the opportunity, there should be a question, are there any other comments or questions before automatically spilling straight into we're moving the motion vote?
Thank you,
I didn't have another question.
I will take that. Yes, I will take that as
I'm not going to object to it. I did have another question, but it was on this end, there was virtually no time between voting on the amendment and being told that we were voting on the motion.
Thank you, Councillor.
There's no opportunity to have any further comment or amendment.
Thank you.
If you so felt that way.
Yeah. Okay, we now need someone to nominate two councillors.
I'll put my hand up.
Councillor Morris. I had a light on. Councillor Williams.
I'd like to nominate.
I'll take Councillor Morris first, then I'll take Councillor Williams because he said first, and then I'll take Councillor Horville. Councillor Morris, you're nominating?
Is it possible to self-nominate, or do you have to have somebody else nominate?
No, you can self-nominate.
I'm saying interested to being a voting delegate if there is a position available.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, Councillor Williams.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Dean Saul.
Councillor Saul.
Madam Mayor, I wish to nominate Councillor McGinn.
Councillor McGinn. And Councillor Horville, you had your hand up. You self-nominating or nominating someone else?
Madam Mayor, I was self-nominating too, but I'd also like to make a comment of Councillor McGinn is being nominated. She should be asked first. I don't know if she has been.
She has been asked, as far as I'm aware, Councillor Saul.
She has been asked and accepted the nomination.
Thank you. So we have 4 people here that have nominated, so we will need to vote.
Madam Mayor.
Manager? Yes, Councillor Horville.
Madam Mayor, my question earlier was to be asking, could we have done this at September Council meeting? But we've now decided it's happening now. But thank you very much for your consideration.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we now need to take a vote on this. There isn't actually anything within the Code of Meeting Practice that would dictate which way we actually do this vote. It's not actually like voting committees and voting the Deputy Mayor and things like that. So I'd suggest that we do what has normally been done for all the other things, and that's actually just simply by show of hands. What we will do is we'll actually work through each of the 4 in the order they'll take, and so that's Councillor Morris, Councillor Saul, Councillor McGinn and Councillor Horville. So for each of those, you will be able to vote, and the 2 with the highest number of votes would be the 2 delegates that would actually come in. Any questions on that?
Is there a limit of is only 1 vote per person?
1 per person.
Just a quick question. Is there only 1 vote per person, per councillor?
Just a moment. Councillor Morris, the General Manager and Mr. Thorogood, just getting back to you on that.
The way I'd see it operating is you'd have 1 vote each, and if we have a tie, you would then, given that you could end up with a tie with 4, I guess, with 2 votes each. On being very unlikely that would occur, I'd suggest that if there's a tie, we actually drop the lower one out and vote again, if councillors are happy with that process.
Just clarifying, because in the past it worked that way and all of a sudden it was varied. So I just wanted to set the ground rules.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you please refresh my memory? Who were the voting delegates last year?
Last year were Councillor Saul and Councillor McGinn.
Thank you.
And the mayor.
Oh, no, sorry, neither of those. That's completely wrong. It was Councillor Williams
And
Saul.
okay, so what we'll do is 1 vote per councillor, and our record staff and Daniel will try and keep a record of that as we actually go. And we'll go through, as I said, in the order that are actually provided. So those wishing to vote for Councillor Morris, there's 2, 3. Yeah, so that was Councillor Morris, Councillor Horville and Councillor Baxter. For Councillor Saul, we've got 3. Councillor Saul, yes, at this stage. So Councillor Saul, Councillor Patterson. You can only vote once at this stage. That's what we've said.
So Councillor Baxter, you've already voted.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Saul, we had Councillor Saul, Councillor Patterson, and the Mayor, I think. Did you?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor McGinn, Councillor Shields, and Councillor Williams, and there'll be no votes left for Councillor Horville. So on the basis of that, your 2 voting delegates would be Councillor Morris and Councillor Saul, with 3 votes each. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing, while we're just doing that, can we just have an indication of the councillors who wish to attend the conference? So we have the Mayor, Patterson, Williams, Saul, Shields, everyone. Okay, we've got everyone. There we go. All right, 9.1.
9.1 point Plumber.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Point Plumber Road bitumen sealing review and environmental factors. It's been moved and seconded, but what I was going to say is not even important anymore. So it's been moved and seconded. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Saul?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just very briefly.
Order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I would like my fellow councillors to have some more, I think, more respect for you. You're actually speaking and people are jumping in saying I move and second before you've even said the thing. So could I ask you to remind people that you should finish speaking before they speak over you, please?
Actually, Councillor, thank you for that point of order. However, in this case, I was the one that was delayed looking at my papers, so it was quite okay. So, yes, go ahead, Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this is a wonderful day. We're finally moving forward on Point Plumber Road sealing. We've had now the review of environmental factors. It's come back saying, yes, we can progress. We've actually had so many delays over the years. This is 20 years in the making, councillors. And finally, we're seeing the end of the light of the tunnel. We've had green activism has led to fear-mongering in our community from NIMBYs and those who are opposing the sealing. So today we're taking a step forward. The road will be sealed. The road, when sealed, will allow our community to be included, to travel down there, to enjoy the scenic parts of Point Plumber and areas. So I commend this. I commend the staff and their work, the consultants, and all those who had a part in having this done, because the community now sees this going forward, and I can tell you the excitement of the community is amazing. So thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's hope this goes through quickly and gets done as soon as possible. Thank you for that.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question, yeah?
Just a seconder of the motion. I'm just wondering if I can make a small comment. Thank you.
That's not part of
That's okay.
unless you have a speaker against. If we have a speaker against,
Yeah,
Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, when we originally voted for this to proceed and apply for the grant, everyone on council, all councillors, spoke in favour except for one who spoke against. And that was outside the code of meeting practice. And at that time, you said you would allow, on such an important occasion and a great public interest, that you would allow anyone who wished to speak to speak. So I would suggest Councillor Patterson should be able to speak.
Point of order, it's the Mayor's decision.
Yeah. And I'm saying that.
Actually, I'm actually going, it is my decision, and I am going to let Councillor Patterson speak, and actually anybody else that wants to speak. We're going to do that because it is such an important matter. I'm not sure, I think everyone's already said what they wanted to say about Point Plummer Road, but obviously not. But I'm going to take questions first. Is there any questions that people need to ask to help them make this decision?
Madam Mayor, I could change mine into two questions if that's okay.
Actually, that would be much better. Yes, your questions are.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions through to the General Manager. What would be the savings on the resheeting versus sealing over a possible 5 to 10 year period on this? And also, the second question is that will council now be doing its due diligence in a manner of safety because of the number of cars that transverse the gravel road during any period, I suppose?
Yeah, through you, I'll just get Mr. Fish to respond to those.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. The savings, there was certainly an analysis of that within the report to Council back in October 2018, and some of that is reiterated within this report to Council. In terms of operating result savings, they're of the order of 50,000 as outlined within the report. Then there is also a annual saving through, in terms of capital works, through no longer requiring to obviously gravel resheet the road. The second part, in terms of, I guess, the traffic volume and safety, that was certainly a large basis of that report back in October 2018, and certainly is one of the key driving factors for obviously informing that decision of council at the time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
How was that question and answer relevant to consideration of the review of environmental factors?
Thank you, Councillor Morris. I was just going to actually speak to this because there seems to be confusion around not confusion, I don't think. I think it's just a matter that councillors want to speak and have their say around Point Plummer Road. This report actually didn't have to come to council. It came to it could have been by delegated authority, but as a council and as officers, it was decided to come to council because it is an important decision, and Point Plummer Road has had controversy around it. We have been through the process. This report is not about whether we seal the road or not. It's prepared in accordance with clause 5.5 of the EPA Act to determine that no significant effect on the environment, and it does not require an environmental impact statement. And if it is accepted today, it now goes through and proceeds. I have a feeling in the chamber that there are, and for the people that are zooming in, some people want to have a say on this, and we can't get confused around what we're talking about here now, and this is the review of the environmental factors. So if there's any further comment, they need to be around the environmental factors. Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Thank
Councillor Horval, and then I'll take Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to ask a question about a contribution from the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment Biodiversity Conservation Division. It's the last point they made on page 14, and it wanting clarification about determining the boundaries so that the roadway doesn't encroach on any coastal wetlands. The answer from council is that it'll be pegged. How is that going to be pegged? Are we going to have surveyors with precise instruments, I presume, pegging it so we do not encroach? And because of that answer, we do not have to have an environmental impact statement. Is that correct? And have I got anything wrong there?
Mr. Fish?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, certainly the contractor will be required to ensure those areas are clearly delineated, and yeah, as per what's listed there, if there is encroachment into a coastal wetlands area, then there is a requirement for environmental impact statement. But the works don't encroach, so there's no requirement as stated within the report.
And very quickly, if I may, a follow-up question to that question: what would the cost be of an environmental impact statement, even though we don't require one? What would the cost be, if, and time-wise, for us to have an environmental impact statement on this?
That, through you, Madam Mayor, we don't have quotes on that. That would be totally dependent on the scope of the actual works. And as it's not required, we've done no work to actually ascertain that.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, do you know?
The answer's been given.
You don't know? Okay. Thank you.
No further questions? No? Any dissent? Oh, Councillor Morris. Councillor Morris.
A question in relation to the design. There were comments made earlier on when the REF, the first draft, went out, that the design hasn't been completed, and there were comments to that effect. There's been comments made that the design will be done to accommodate the sensitive areas. Has the design yet been finalised?
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
Yes, the design has been finalised, and it does accommodate to ensure it doesn't go through coastal wetland areas. And
appropriate erosion sedimentation control is capable of being installed between the edge of the design and as that. Just I've got some concerns. I haven't seen any of that detail, so I got great reservations in agreeing with point 2.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the contractor undertaking the works would obviously do the detailed design in terms of erosion and sedimentation controls. But yeah, certainly there's the necessary room available to undertake that work.
Councillor Baxter and then Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to bring the Council's attention to page 15. The point about a Dungutty elder provided a map of heritage sites and sacred sites, and then we had Dr. Westaway's report out of this REF. I'd like to highlight to the Councils one of the great side effects of this REF is that it has ignited the interest of the Dungutty to see their sacred sites, to possibly create something out of those sacred sites, some thriving enterprise out of those sacred sites. And I think that's one of the great side effects of this report. I realise it was a lot of time and effort for the council, and I want to thank Director Fish for going to all that trouble. And I hope that the Dungutty do move on these sacred sites and make it an enterprise for them. It would be a great side effect out of all of this heat and light that we've had to go through. Thank you.
Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, if I may.
And the amendment is?
I've emailed it through. Let's see if I've got it. Add to 9.1. That'll be a point 4, I presume. Council will request that Transport for New South Wales, after finalisation of the design phase, determine speed limits and report to the Kempsey Traffic Committee prior to completion of construction and sealing of the road. And I've got a definite reason for moving this, Madam Mayor.
actually, that's,
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
before there's a second to ask for that, that's already in action.
I still need a seconder, Madam Mayor.
sorry, Councillor,
I need a seconder. I believe Councillor Morris just seconded. Is that possible?
is that what you've done, Councillor Morris? You've seconded it?
Correct.
Yeah, because you also had your hand up before, I think.
To ask a question, but I didn't have, I had my hand up directly after that.
So you've seconded, and just before we move on, in case it's related, Councillor Morris, do you have your question?
I've already asked a question previously about the design.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have an amendment, and we've had the comment from the General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I saw, as the General Manager said it in the body of the report, that sort of thing is going to happen. But we've got to be responsible to our community we represent. And I kind of feel a bit miffed by Councillor Saul saying we've got to take on the people who oppose this. Those people who oppose this have that right to oppose. They also shouldn't be categorised as NIMBYs. They are members.
Point of order, that's a slander.
Just a moment, there was a point of order before that to say point of relevance.
What is the relevance to the amendment?
I'll accept that point of order. Please make it relevant to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was trying to make it relevant in that we represent people. There's a great concern. We've had a huge number of submissions and a huge number of people, and I haven't got the count, all those submissions that came in and the survey from the Facebook, which was biased in my opinion, but
the amendment that you're moving is around the traffic and the speed
zone.
Is that what you're speaking to?
I'm speaking to that, Madam Mayor. If you wait a moment, I hope I make it clear. I'm sorry I'm not being clear, but we're answerable to the people. The people are worried about speeding cars on bitumen. There's so many people saying there's going to be deaths and all those sorts of things. We need to be proactive in saying we're not going to let a new bit of bitumen cause more death and mayhem. And to do that, we need speed zones, and we're going to be telling them that once it's completed, there will be a speed zone and the police will be able to travel that road and get people who are speeding. There's a concern in the community, and that concern is feeding the No Tar and Gulwar and No Tar and Plumber group. We've got to answer them. We've got to accept that there is concern and that we are, as a council, are doing it, and we're doing it. And even though it's in the body of the report, as the General Manager very correctly pointed out, we need to put it in the motion that goes out from this meeting that we are dealing with the speed limits on the new bit of sealed road when it happens, and we're dealing with it by making sure the Kempsey Traffic Committee is getting information from Transport for New South Wales. And that's what this amendment does, but it's making clear that we're doing our job as council. I ask you to support this very simple thing to make it clear to our community.
Is there any other questions or any other speakers for the amendment? Oh, you can't speak for it. Thank you. I put the amendment. All in favour of the amendment? Any dissent on the amendment? I'm sorry, councillors, that's why you're confused. Let's start again. Is there any dissent on the amendment? The amendment has been lost. And for there's a question from Councillor Morris.
Just a quick question. As I've stressed earlier, this is about the REF, not about the sealing of the road. I have got great reservations with point 2, and I've got a question emanating from that. If this is voted affirmatively by council or individual councillors, is there any personal liability on councillors if there is a challenge and it's found that the environmental factors were deficient, the review of environmental factors were deficient, and an EIS should have been undertaken?
Through Madam Mayor, no, there's no personal liability on the councillors.
Okay. That aside, I move an amendment, and that is that council notes the details of the review of environmental factors as amended following public exhibition. Full stop. As has been stressed previously, council staff have delegated authority to determine it, and I believe it should be determined.
Couldn't hear that, Madam Mayor. Sorry.
Have you got it in writing, Councillor Saul, Councillor Morris at all?
No, it was fairly straightforward.
Can you repeat it so that we can get it back up on the board?
That council note the details contained within the review of environmental factors as amended following public consultation or public exhibition, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I might incorporate in the first motion then.
Councillor Morris, Councillor Saul said that he's happy to incorporate that, if that's okay.
No, I'm not suggesting it as an additional point. I'm suggesting that as the entire.
Oh, that's
motion.
the entire motion. I'm sorry. I thought that you were putting that in as a third point, a fourth point.
As stressed previously by the General Manager, that the staff have delegated authority. I believe that the professionally qualified staff with delegated authority to execute or to determine the review of environmental factors is the appropriate way to do it, not to ask the councillors who are not qualified in that regard to make such a determination.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Horval. Do you wish to speak further, Councillor Morris?
Madam Mayor, what I'd like to say is that I don't believe the councillors as a body have got the appropriate technical skills to determine what is in the original motion. Therefore, I suggest we should just be noting it and having the staff who have got delegated authority to execute such findings to actually execute their delegation. I personally cannot support point 2 and say that that will not have a significant effect and does not require the preparation of environmental impact statement. I personally do not have enough detailed information in regard to design. All I have is the comment that it will be designed in an appropriate way, or it has been designed, but I have not seen those designs. The review of environmental vision also has some anomalies that warranted changes. Are there any other anomalies that have not been picked up that may still require?
Madam Mayor, I'll speak against that one.
I'm just going to ask General Manager, do you want to comment?
Through
General
Madam
Manager
Mayor,
to comment on this procedure.
Councillor Morris is correct that staff do have delegation. We could have actually done this without actually bringing the report to council and all that as well. The comment that Councillor Morris made that the councillors don't have technical expertise, if that was applied to the majority of reports that come to council, then you'd actually move exactly the same thing, and as a councillors collectively don't have technical expertise in many areas. They are there and elected to make considered decisions based on the information presented to them. That is normal practice.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Horval, you have a question?
No, Madam Mayor, I believe Councillor Saul wanted to speak against the amendment, but I wanted to speak in general in favour of the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Why did you think he was going to speak against the amendment?
He actually said so, Madam Mayor.
David.
Madam Mayor, after the General Manager has spoken, I don't need to now. Thank you for that.
Oh, okay. Councillor Horval, your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'd like to say that the amount of staff work dealing with the 400 and something page document, the review of environmental factors, the 737 page survey, all the other technical documents.
Your question is?
Not a question. I'm making a speech in favour of the amendment, Madam Mayor.
There has been no speaker against. Councillor Saul withdrew his right to speak because his question, and after the General Manager spoke, he was just about to say the same thing. So there is no speaker against.
Well, Madam Mayor, very quickly, I'd just like to commend the staff for the huge amount of work they've done.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for any dissent on the amendment of Councillor Morris. The amendment has been lost. we now go back to the original motion. We can't put the okay, is there any dissent on the original motion?
Madam Mayor, could I move an amendment, please?
I've already put the motion and it had been voted on.
Well, I had my hand up to move an amendment, and you obviously didn't see my.
Actually, your hand is out of screen, Councillor Horval.
See it now?
When Councillor Morris puts his hand up, he puts it right in front of his face, and it's very, very effective. So I suggest that that would be a really good way of doing it.
I apologise, Madam Mayor. I'll try to.
So your amendment is?
Very quickly, we delete point 2 of the original motion and renumber 3 and 4 to 2 and 3.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Horval?
Yes, it solves all the issues before Council at the moment. We're actually saying that we don't need to determine the bitumen ceiling or the environmental impact statement. It doesn't need to be there. The other 3 points would address the fact that we're noting the report. And thank you very much.
Okay, do I have any, no lights on? I move, any dissent on the amendment? The amendment's been lost. We're back to the original motion. Any dissent on the original motion? Councillor Morris and Councillor Horval. Thank you. That the Point Plummer Road is carried. We go now to 9.2. Just before we do, and in introducing that item, I'd just like to say something about this. And as with Point Plummer Road, which is what I was going to say before, these are things that we set out to do when we first developed our delivery plan for this term of council. That was 4 years ago, councillors. And if all things were equal in the world and we didn't have COVID, this would be the last meeting of the council that was elected 4 years ago. So there's also in the report that further detailed planning and community feedback will be considered to be incorporated for any future funding, which will take into consideration the people that did take the time to have input into the plan that we put out. So more detail will come with further detailed design. But when we have plans in place like this that we've seen with our sports strategy, which was part of that delivery plan that we put together 4 years ago, sport, and by adopting that, we have been able to get funding by doing the Kemp Street and the Services Club Park, which is what's in front of us today. And the recommendation means that we can move forward with something else that we have planned to do and have the opportunity to see happen through getting funding. So we have a recommendation. We have had a mover, which was Councillor Patterson, and I think we have a Councillor Shields that has seconded it. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just reiterate your comments about planning, positive planning, working forward to the Kempsey Shire Council to have put the strategies together to deliver sporting complexes for Eden Street, and now to deliver a plan for a master plan for Kemp Street. It's just fantastic to see council working to benefit the community, and this is going to be a great asset for our community once the funding is being sought. Thank you.
Councillor Horval speaking against, or if you have got a question?
A question, Madam Mayor. How locked in is the idea that the athletics field would be moved to Kemp Street? Quite a few submissions came in that people wrote about the fact that it would be cooler to have the athletic field where it is now instead of at Kemp Street. So how adaptable are these master plans for where the athletic field would be?
Mr. Fish.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the plans in front of you obviously show the athletics field move to Kemp Street, and certainly on that basis, those plans will inform how those sites develop going forward. So, I'd be suggesting that your adoption would obviously lock that in. My understanding, I think, from the submissions, there was only one that was clearly against the move. Which related to heat, I think was the understanding, was the reasoning provided.
Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a slight amendment to the second point.
And the amendment is?
So the second point would retains the name Service Clubs Park and they seek a naming history from the Macleay River Historical Society for appropriate future signage. If I get a second, I'd like to speak very quickly to that, please.
Councillor Morris is seconded.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Service Clubs Park, and I remember when I first arrived here in 1977, there was a big sign showing all the service clubs that had done all the work to create it. And I forget there's probably 3 or 4, maybe more, but I would suggest we find out from the Macleay River Historical Society, who really do have a wonderful track record on knowing the history of our Shire. And when new signs go up, when we get the money and we have the development underway, we'll have appropriate signage that reflects the fact that those service clubs from in our history be recognised. That's why I'm asking that to be done, and it'll just go into the file with the grant if we grant application. If we get the grant, it can be proceeded with. So I ask you to support the simple petition.
Can I ask for a comment from the General Manager?
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, if I can just get clarified from Councillor Horval, are you suggesting that we liaise with them and that they provide what the signage would look like, or just liaise with them about background information? Because any signage at the field would be in line with Council's overall signage strategy for all the fields. It wouldn't be done just in that one with the Historical Society. So just clarify that, please.
Yes, I'm just saying that, as I said, Mr. General Manager, there was a series of signs up playing the clubs before, and I would say that if we go ahead and it's Service Clubs Park, that we have some historical background on what those clubs were, and the council, in whatever way in the future we get the grant, that we would have signed up recognising the fact of those clubs' service to our community.
So we have an amendment. No more speakers, no more lights. Any dissent on the amendment? The amendment has been lost. We go back to the original motion. Yes, Councillor Morris.
At the end of the report, it makes comment that the naming of Services Club Park be retained pending further review of naming public spaces across the Shire as a longer-term consideration. I'm just wondering whether that intent should be included in point 2, because point 2 basically implies that it's Service Clubs Park forever, where the body of the report indicates, or the conclusion at the end of the report indicates that it be further reviewed. So I'm suggesting an amendment would be retains the name Service Club Park subject to further review of public spaces across the Shire as a longer term consideration.
That's okay.
It's not an issue. Councillor Patterson, I think, is... Councillor Patterson?
Madam Mayor, could I just get that replied by Councillor Morris?
What was that?
What he wants to change, just replied, because I'm just trying to...
You want it repeated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Retains the name Service Clubs Park, subject to a further review of the naming of public spaces across the Shire as a longer term consideration.
Which is in the report.
Which is right at the end of the report. The report says that we're going to be reviewing it. So are we going to be reviewing it or aren't we going to be reviewing it? Does the body of the report mean anything or mean nothing?
Because the way it's written, my understanding is the way it's written, it just retains the name Services Club Park could mean forever, and it doesn't. Thank you.
And the body of the report doesn't say that?
Yes.
Question, Madam Mayor, if I may then, please.
Yes.
How does one go about changing names? Wouldn't that come to council as a proposal? I mean...
Can I just ask the gentleman,
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, with point 2 as it is at the moment, the name Services Club Park would be there and it would stay there until council or subsequent councils at some point decided to change it. Councils are free to change the names of any parks at any stage. They just go through a process to do that. It doesn't lock council in forever to have that name. However, Councillor Morris's addition makes that very clear.
Madam Mayor, as the mover of the motion, I think that's okay.
You'd like to accept that into the motion?
That's okay, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Did you hear that, Councillor Morris? Are you okay with that?
Yes. Well, just it's in the body of the report. So
yeah.
In fact, the conclusion of the report says that.
And that makes it very clear. So the mover is happy to accept that. So we have we've gone back to the original motion. Any dissent? No more lights on. No hands up. Any dissent on the recommendation? No, that's been passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Now we move to item 9.3, which is the community grant program. There is a recommendation. Do I have a thank you, Councillor Shields. Do I have a seconder? You're seconding that, Councillor Horval?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you.
It's been seconded by Councillor Horval. Any lights on, hands up? You've got a hand up, Councillor Morris. I'll take Councillor Morris.
I had a question last night.
Yeah, I'll take Councillor Morris, then I'll take Councillor Horval.
I had a question last night in regard to the registration for not-for-profit organisations or community groups. And I was told that it would be checked and there would be an answer as to what form of registration was required. Has that been ascertained?
Yep. I can do.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Morris, that is a requirement of the New South Wales Office of Fair Trading. So the registration process would follow the forms and processes that are outlined by the Office of Fair Trading, and so that would be sort of fairly clear defined process, and that's why that was included in the recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Another quick question. At the end of the report, it says impact on financial sustainability. The $65,000 recommended to be allocated to the proposed community grants program as outlined in the above table has been included in the adopted 21 budget. And yet we've got as point 2, approve the allocation of funds from the environmental levy to fund the environmental levy grant program. I just question why point 2 is required. And if point 2 is required, why is an equivalent point not required for the remainder of the $65,000?
Yep.
So on that basis, I move an amendment to remove drop point 2.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Morris, that was included by the staff on the basis of, I guess, ensuring that we had maximum transparency around that, given that the environmental levy required IPART approval. So the only reason that was specifically called out, as against the other 3 elements of the grants program, was to acknowledge that and ensure that that was clear.
Question.
We have an amendment. I have an amendment which I need a seconder for, unless the mover is considering.
I'll withdraw it then on the basis.
You can withdraw it, thank you. So Councillor Saul has a question, then I think Councillor Horval had a question. Councillor Horval was first. Councillor Horval?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In point 4, Madam Mayor, there's, I'll read it, note that the continued review and implementation of best practice grants management process will require updates to associated policies and procedures. How soon would those policies and procedures have to be amended if we pass this, and would those amendments have to come back to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd anticipate any review would be subject to two things. One would be just a regular time, which would be somewhere often between 12 months to 2 years. We would actually review it, but it may also be required to review should there be any change in legislation that requires us to actually undertake that review. If it was a council adopted policy, then it would have to come back to council. The procedures and that are normally dealt with under delegation.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager.
Thank you.
On page 41,
Had a mover. We've had.
Madam Mayor, I had another question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, on page 41, talking about the environmental levy grants, it talks on the specific program criteria. At the top, it says project must be approved by council staff prior to application. How can a project be approved before it's applied for? It just seems like a what's the process that's going to make that happen? It just seems confusing to me.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that step there has been included, Councillor Horville, on the basis that there are certain requirements with the environmental levy and the funding, and that was approved via IPAR. In terms of the process, my understanding would be that we'd obviously be wanting staff to have a look at those to vet them essentially before they would proceed through and be assessed to make sure that they meet the requirements as per the environmental levy funding.
So to be clear, they would have to apply before they could make an application. Is that how it works?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they'd actually discuss it with the staff first and have a discussion with the staff to ensure it aligns with the environmental levy strategy. And that allows the staff to act as an advisory role to those wishing to make an application and ensure then that it does meet the criteria.
Okay, thank you, Mr. General Manager. It just seemed a little bit confusing the way that was worded, but thank you very much.
Any dissent? No lights. Any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That's been moved passed unanimously. 9.4, HOPETOUN Street.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saul, and it's been seconded by Councillor Shields. Any questions?
Madam Mayor,
just a moment. Councillor Saul wishes to speak first, then I'll take the two questions. Councillor Horville and Councillor Morris have got their questions in. Yes, Councillor.
Well, Madam Mayor, just to be very brief, it's fairly straightforward. It's actually only coming to council because we have a councillor applying for this DA. So the comment will be it's fairly straightforward, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Just for Councillor Horville's and Councillor Morris's information, because I don't know if you can see very well that Councillor Patterson did leave the chambers. Your question, Councillor Morris?
My quick question is, does the location of the back of the building comply with the offset requirements for that parcel of land?
Mr. Fish.
As constructed?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I would expect that would have been a consideration as part of the review of the application.
So it does or it doesn't, or it was possibly a consideration?
Well, yeah, certainly, Councillor Morris, it would have been considered, so I would expect it does comply, otherwise it would have been outlined within the report specifically.
Councillor Horville?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When was, just to be clear, it's not very clear in the documentation, was this constructed before a development application was put into council?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, it's a continued use the development application, so that's correct.
So when was it constructed? Do you know?
No, I'm not aware of that, but it's not of relevance really to what you're considering today. You're considering whether the actual application on its merits, irrespective of whether it's in place or not. Okay,
so the follow-up question to that, I guess, is would we not consider that a councillor who deals with development applications coming across council meetings all the time would know that before he constructed something, he would have to put a development application in?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's not relevant to Council's consideration.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment if I could.
And your amendment is?
That the application be referred for an independent assessment and future report to council for decision.
Do I have a second now?
For the purpose of discussion.
Madam Mayor, my simple point here is that we as councillors have a conflict, and we have a fellow councillor who's put in a development application after he's built something, and it's been assessed by the planning staff who do their very best, but and I'm sure there is no conflict, but to be above board, open and transparent, we should send off the whole application for an independent assessment to a neighbouring council, if that's possible, to their planning department to do a full assessment. In that way, we are going to have much more clarity on the fact that we're going to be passing something that has independent assessment, and the thing's already built, so it's not an important thing in timeline, but it will give us clarity on our role in determining a fellow councillor's development application. So I think it's a very simple thing, and there's no rush to have a decision on this, so it could be made at next council meeting if we get an independent assessment. So that's why I've moved it. It's basically to remove any perception in the community that we have a conflict.
I have Councillor Williams, you had your light on. I'll take Councillor Williams and I'll take Councillor Shields. Are you speaking against, or you got a question?
I've just got a question. Thanks.
Yes, I'll take your questions. Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the General Manager, how many other continued uses do we send off for independent assessments, and how many approximately? I know the exact numbers wouldn't be available on hand, but there are many things that happen all the time. I've seen several of these come to council before.
Not from a council.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the people building and then seeking approval afterwards is not uncommon, and it would be very, very rare. I can't recall, going back quickly over the last decade or more, where a report like this would be sent off to someone third party outside of the council. The councillors don't have a conflict of interest in this. The one councillor that does has left the room. The councillors are actually elected to make these decisions.
Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is through you to Director Fish. Would this be setting a precedent for this particular procedure, considering that councillor DAs and staff DAs come to council in this manner? Have we ever sent any others to be assessed independently?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, you would typically only send a DA off for independent assessment if a conflict of interest exists, I guess, within the staff that may be assessing it. So often if there is a staff DA, we will take that off for independent assessment, or secondly, if for some reason there's not the expertise available to undertake the assessment.
Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Fish, do we have any recent occurrences where such a thing occurred and we had to send off a development application for independent assessment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, as I've just mentioned, we do have often where staff related to a DA, we will send that off. So there has been the occasional one of that. Other than that, I think I'm only aware of one other DA at the moment.
Was one of those the ones that Willawara?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Just, Madam Mayor, just a couple of questions in relation to the recommended conditions of consent. They just, when you go and look at them, it says that all building work must be carried out in accordance with the requirement of the Building Code of Australia, but there's no building work. And then it goes on to say, for any residential building work for which the Home Building Act requires there to be a contract of insurance in force. I'm just wondering what the applicability of these conditions are. And it says for any temporary structure that is used as an entertainment venue. What conditions in relation to an temporary use as an entertainment venue got to do with continued use of this particular facility?
General Manager.
Madam Mayor, I believe they'd probably just be standard conditions that have just been inserted in the conditions of consent.
Because they're the only conditions that are there, except for the fact that there needs to be a report demonstrating compliance with the above commencement conditions. There's no commencement, it's finalised. A building certificate for the existing factory additions has been issued by council under and a Building Code of Australia report demonstrating conformity. They're really the only conditions on deferred commencement, and we kind of deferred commencement because it's already finalised. The conditions of consent don't seem to line up with the matter at hand.
The answer's been provided.
So,
What was the answer then, please?
They would be just standard conditions.
Even though they make no common sense or relation to the actual application at hand.
The answer had been provided,
Yeah.
Councillor.
So obviously the conditions don't need to relate to the issue at hand.
Councillor Morris is out of order.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Councillor, Madam Mayor.
Sorry?
Yeah.
You've got a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, was Councillor Saul making a point of order, Madam Mayor?
He did make a point of order which I didn't uphold.
Thank you. I didn't hear about
It might have been clear that I
Thank you.
did.
There's delays in the sound. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, and I apologise if that's coming over the top of you.
Is there any dissent on the amendment? Just the amendment's been lost. We now go back to the original recommendation. Any dissent on the original recommendation? There's one right in front of your face. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, that has been carried. We'll now move on to item 9.5, which is another planning matter, Stewart Street, Crescent Head. There's a recommendation. Oh, before we do, we're just going to have a little break. We're just going to get Councillor Patterson.
Just say something, Chair, while we're waiting. I'd just like to remind my fellow councillors, especially the people making some amendments all the time, that we run the risk of insulting the staff when we're constantly questioning. I mean, Councillor Morris questioned the REF.
Councillor, I think we won't go any further with that conversation. We are in a council meeting, and we've now got. You can take that up later, individually if you wish, or at some convened meeting. But thank you, Councillor Patterson has returned to chambers. We have 9.5 Stewart Street, Crescent Head, planning matter. Do I have a mover? No mover. Councillor Patterson's moved it.
I'll second that.
And it's been seconded by Councillor Williams. Is there any questions? No question. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, in the report that goes with this, I cannot find the submission that was received. Why was that not included in the documents attached to it, please?
Thank you, Mr. Fitch.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. There's a summary of, I guess, the key content of the submission that's within there. So the issues that have been raised, which I think from memory are largely related to view sharing, are mentioned and obviously addressed in detail within the report.
Thank you. You know that you've got another question,
Yes,
and then I'll say Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, can I continue with the question? I'm not sure whether you've called me. Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can I ask another question, please?
Yes.
And maybe to the General Manager through you, Madam Mayor. When submissions come in, the normal procedure, Mr. General Manager, is that councillors get to see the original submission. Is that the normal procedure of council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, councillors, Mr. Fish provided a response to that. Occasionally staff don't get everything 100% right. Occasionally there is an oversight and occasionally a submission might not be attached.
Councillor Morris.
Just a quick question. Where are we up to as far as looking at a review of the Kempsey Environment Plan, particularly for places like Crescent Head, where we seem to be regularly approving subdivisions considerably under the minimum lot size?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. That's part of Council's, I guess, broader strategic planning program. We're currently putting in place, I guess, a number of the building blocks that will inform that going forward. So things like the local strategic planning statements and the like. So it will be a future consideration, but certainly the current LEP provides for variations to it. Obviously, where I guess they are appropriate.
Councillor Hawthorne.
In the body of the report, Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask a question about it. It's on page 48. It talks about clause 4.1a of the Kempsey Local Environment Plan 2013, and it permits a minimum lot size of 300 square metres when in the same application consent is sought for subdivision and the erection of a dwelling house on each lot resulting from the subdivision. Now, at the present moment, and this goes on in the information provided by council, there's already a house on one part of this proposed subdivision. So how can we approve something which is against 4.1a?
Director Fish.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. The paragraph that's at the bottom of page 48 with regard to clause 4.1a is provided there just for your information in that I guess the same outcome that this DA ultimately seeks can be is permitted under that clause 4.1a, but does require the subdivision to occur with the in conjunction with the two houses in terms of a DA. So it's just provided for your information, but as I've mentioned just a minute ago, that clause 4.6 within the LEP does provide for the ability to consider variations, and there's quite a bit of information with regard to the variation within the report.
Chair.
Councillor Hawthorne. Oh, and then I'll take Councillor Baxter.
Now, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment.
And your amendment is?
We defer this item to September Council and include the submission for councillor review.
Do I have a seconder? It's lapsed due to no seconder. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Just speaking in favour of the, if I could call everyone's attention to page 47.
Just a sec. You're speaking in favour. Who do we have? No one's spoken against and no one's spoken for. Your right to waive and use your right of reply. Then I can get back Councillor Baxter. Who moved this? Yeah, and then I could get back Councillor Baxter to speak.
I'll speak
against. Oh, sorry. We have an amendment. No, it lapsed. No, it's okay. Councillor Baxter.
I would like to speak against it, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Baxter, we haven't had anyone speak for it, so Councillor,
Thank you, Chair. Page 47, if you could look at the aerial photo there, you'll see...
and just so that Councillor, this doesn't come back to the next minute of council that I have done the wrong thing when we adopt minutes. In actual fact, Councillor Patterson didn't have the opportunity to speak for this. The amendment was lost. We're now back to the original motion. There has been no speaker for the original motion. Councillor Patterson has agreed that he's going to he's going to reserve his right to reply, and Councillor Baxter is speaking for it. After that, then a speaker can speak against it.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the aerial photo there, page 47, you'll see the predominance of houses on both sides of those streets, and the vacant block there that you can see where the proposed subdivision is would easily fit another house. I'd like to keep all the councillors aware of the fact that Crescent Head has been facing a serious crisis as far as a reduction in family and residential housing there. We've had this slow erosion of the permanent residents, where a lot of houses are becoming holiday houses. So I think any possibility of attracting another family to the village is a good thing. So yes, I see nothing wrong with it, and as you can see from that aerial shot, it's just common sense to see that you could fit another house there. Thank you.
Councillor Horval had his hand up to speak for against this. But Councillor Morris, do you have a question, or you?
Just a very quick question. On page 48, it says the current. Where is it now? Although it's in brackets, although an appropriate building envelope has been used that is demonstrated building could be considered on the site. What size is that appropriate building envelope? And are those shadow diagrams and so forth that are included, are they for the maximum size building that could be approved for that site? Or are they for an appropriate building as opposed to the maximum potential building, allowing for offsets and number of stories and that sort of thing?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I expect that those shadow diagrams have been done based on the what the maximum building envelope would look like based on height and obviously setbacks.
And they clearly show that there's minimal impact on shadowing and so forth and loss of view from surrounding properties, don't they?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, there's the effects are listed in quite a bit of detail in the report, given obviously the importance with regards to view and also overshadowing. So there's quite a bit of commentary on what the impacts there are on the surrounding residents.
Councillor Horval speaking against.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm speaking against on the idea of the process that we've followed here. There's this matter of another oversight where the submission wasn't attached to councillor review, so I'm posing on that. On the bigger picture, though, we have a Kempsey Local Environment Plan from 2013, which has all these conditions on every zone, and it's not the planning department, it's council voting in favour of such things as variations to boundary setback, minimum lot size, and in this case, we're actually allowing a subdivision where one part of the subdivision already has a house on it, which is against 4.18. It's very clear that this should not be accepted, and every time we vote in favour of such variation to the Kempsey Local Environment Plan, we're setting a precedent for Kempsey council's planning department say, well, that's what councillors expect to happen. We had 14 applications, as an answer to one of my questions, 14 applications for variations to boundary setback and in the last year, and 14 were approved. We've actually set that precedent ourselves in our voting when we allowed 0 setback on a case at Fredericton. So I'm saying we've got to start voting in favour of the Kempsey Local Environment Plan. We know that it's going to be reviewed, but at the moment, these are the rules for this zone, and voting in favour of this application will actually continue setting a precedent of allowing the subdivision down to 24% below the minimum required area for a house in that area. 24%. We've had it 10%, but now we're down to 24%. And in regard to what Councillor Baxter said, looking at the photograph of the area, when were those houses built and what was the local environment plan when they were built? I'm talking about the one that operates since 2013, and it has these conditions, and those houses could have been built before these conditions were put in place. So I'd suggest, warmly, I guess, that people would vote against this and let it not go ahead.
Thank you. Just leave it. Okay. Do you wish to exercise your right of reply, Councillor Patterson?
Just very quickly.
That'll close debate, but yes.
Very quickly, Madam Mayor. I think this is great work by our council and council staff to allow utilisation of allowable building land in Crescent Head Town Centre. We're reiterating Councillor Baxter's remarks is that we need more houses and more families in Crescent Head, and I put this to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any dissent on the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor. There's been one dissent, so it's been carried. We're going to now break for morning tea, and we will have about 5 to. We'll be back here at 5 to 11. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
And we're live.
Thank you, councillors. We now resume the meeting. And we're all here. We're about to go to 9.6. And just before we do that, I just want to say something. And I just want to point out that this is another project that we included in our 4-year delivery plan, which we are now seeing come together. I'd like to recognise the work of our council staff in the planning and the negotiation of this $17 million project. I know that the GM, Director Fish, and his staff have been the centre of getting this project to this point. And Port Macquarie Hastings Council will now have the responsibility of the project delivery, and Councillor Fish from Kempsey Shire Council will be the co-sponsor. There'll be different roles and responsibilities, but both councillors are directly responsible for the MOU and the delivery. And this is just a really great example of working together. This time, not just for our shire, but for the region. Through working with our neighbouring council, with the state government, with our community, as our General Manager always points out to us, I think that this recommendation and the fact that we can now start to move forward is that we are better together. We have a mover, which is Councillor Patterson. I have a seconder, Councillor Horval. Are you seconding that?
No, Madam Mayor. I was trying to move it, but that's okay. I couldn't see that Councillor Patterson had moved it.
Councillor Horval did have his hand up, and I could see it at the foot of my screen. So it's been seconded by Councillor Horval.
No, Madam Mayor, I'm not seconding it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, you're not. Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor Shields. Thank you, Councillor Shields. So you have a question or an amendment, and then I think Councillor Morris, did you have your hand up too?
No.
No. Okay. There's no lights. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I don't know whether Councillor Patterson wanted to speak to his motion first. I'll give way if he does.
You wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, I would just a right reply to finish the.
You're going to reserve right of reply.
Can I ask a question, Jack?
Councillor Horval either has an amendment or a question. He hasn't said yet. If it's an amendment, I'll take the amendment, but and then I'll take his question because he was first, and then Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I have a question and I also have an amendment, if that's possible. Madam Mayor, through you to Director Fish, I guess, just to be clear, the memorandum of understanding that was voted in favour by Port Macquarie Hastings Council on the 12th last week had a slight variation to the document that has been put up by our council, in that the index has 8 points, our index has only 7, and the missing index point is point 7, communications protocol. Director Fish, would the signing of this document be the one that has been put up by Port Macquarie Hastings Council?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Within the document, the only variance is in the table of contents, as Councillor Hall has pointed out. I suspect Port Macquarie Hastings Council did some formatting of the document after we shared it. The changes aren't material, so I don't believe it to be an issue at all.
Thank you, Director Fish. So my amendment, Madam Mayor, is to move the amendment that was the resolution of Port Macquarie Hastings Council. It's almost the same, but has some additional points. And I've forwarded it through. The amendment is that Council 1, note the status of the Marais River Road upgrade project as detailed within this report, including the recently announced $17 million New South Wales Government grant. Point 2, that Council note the proposed lead in delivering the overall project management of the Marais River Road upgrade project across both the Port Macquarie Hastings and Kempsey Shire Council segments of the project will be Port Macquarie Hastings Council. Point 3, enter a memorandum of understanding of Port Macquarie Hastings Council for delivery and governance of the Marais River Road upgrade project. And 4, note that in the year 2020-21, design and investigation work shall commence for the delivery of the multi-year project, with the construction phase anticipated to commence in the 2021-22 financial year. That's my amendment, which is
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need to be on page with what's happening at Port Macquarie Hastings Council. They have put in 2 extra points, points 1 and 2. And with regard to the fact that our resolutions go out to the public, we should be detailing the fact that it's a $17 million New South Wales government grant, which both shires would be eternally grateful for what it will do for tourism and for local trade and travel. And finally, the second point notes that the delivery project will be managed by Port Macquarie Hastings Council staff, working in concert as detailed in the report with Kempsey Shire Council, with Director Fish taking the lead. So those first 2 points are exactly what the other council passed, and we should be at one with them because they are managing the project.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I can just make a couple of comments. The resolution is framed the way it has been because Council actually resolved at its last Council meeting to acknowledge the $17 million grant funding, and the MOU itself actually acknowledges the actual structure of the relationship with Port Macquarie as the lead, so they were both deleted from the original motion from Port Macquarie, as we believe they are not necessary.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker against the amendment? I put the amendment. Any dissent on the amendment? The amendment's been lost.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
We have a resolution. We have a motion. Councillor Baxter, your question.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a question. Looking at the conclusion on page 53, the Marai River Road provides for significant benefits to Kempsey Shire Council, communities and visitors. I'd just like to ask Director Fish if he thinks it would be a good idea, given we're getting this $17 million and we're hoping there's a net benefit to the whole community, and maybe it will help us with future requests for grants, should we or could we measure somehow the benefits? Let's say the road's finished. Is there any way the council can, via communicating with all the businesses in Crescent, Gladstone, Hathead, South West Rock, if we could get some feedback from them, and then they turn around and say 12 months after the road's finished, our revenue has increased by X and employment has increased by X. Do you think it would benefit us for future requests for investment in the valley that we say, here you go, here was a net investment of 17 million, and here's a...
Order, Madam Mayor, relevance to the motion at hand.
Yeah, new question. Oh, he has asked the question.
Point of order, relevance to the motion at hand.
Thank you, Councillor.
Entering into the MOU.
Well, I'm talking about the conclusion in the MOU.
That's
the conclusion on page 53 on the report.
You've asked the question
of Director Fish, if he thinks it would be worth our while.
And the point of order that was given is what relevance that has to do with the MOU and the works that are being undertaken.
Well, I thought
I'll let the question be answered, but I take the point of order. So let's just be succinct in our questioning and make them relevant, because Director Fish has got an answer ready, so you can answer it, Director.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. In developing the grant applications that have been done for this particular project, of which there have been a few in recent years, certainly the respective benefits of the project, such as safety benefits, amenity benefits, and economic benefits, are are considered as part of those applications, and there's obviously appropriate modelling undertaken to inform the potential, I guess, the benefit cost ratio as such for the project. I guess a verification following construction is potentially quite a difficult thing to do to understand that any, I guess, economic benefits are directly attributed to work. So we'd probably need to seek some guidance as to, I guess, an appropriate mechanism for that to occur. But it would be difficult, I believe, to do that measurement.
Thank you. No further questions or lights. Any dissent on the motion? On the amendment, I mean.
The amendment's been voted.
The amendment's already been considered.
Sorry, the amendment has been motioned. It's been voted on. We're back to the original motion. Any dissent on the original motion?
Madam Mayor, I had a right of reply.
Oh, you did have the right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you,
You
Madam
may
Mayor.
use your right of reply.
Yes, I'll just make this short and brief, Madam Mayor, that it's fantastic that our council is entering into the MOU for the tarring of Maria River Road, which is going to bring benefits for the future evermore for our whole area, but in both directions, and very much so will be the safety of the users of this road. And I'm looking forward to this project's completion and delivering a wealth of business for the Crescent Head and the Macleay areas.
Thank you. Any dissent on the recommendation? It's been passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That's another great result. We move now to 9.7. In introducing this report, these reports, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. This is a new report, and this, along with the following items, which is 9.8, which is the delivery program 2017 to 2023, another one of our 4-year milestones, and a quarterly budget review progress report, are really important information to give line of sight and to give visibility. Through our continuous improvement program, we're now getting really excellent reporting that I've never seen before in the time I've been on council. And this provides benefit to councillors when decisions need to be made, and to the community, importantly, for information, understanding and transparency. And this is another one of the things that we said in our delivery plan that we wanted to improve. We wanted to improve communication. We wanted to improve our relationships with the community. And these reports are an important part of that increased communication and in measuring the things that we are now doing. And I acknowledge that putting the process is in place is taking time, professionalism and dedication to task. And we are seeing that improvement, and Director Mitchell and his staff are to be commended for what we are now seeing. As far as the results go, despite or in spite of drought, fires, storms and COVID-19, we have still achieved much for what we have planned to do. And we are being smart. We are concentrating on being strategic, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound in our plans for the future. Nothing is perfect. Life will always throw up something, but these reports do outline our progress. We have a mover for the report.
Second that.
Thank you, Councillor Shields and Councillor Saul. Questions? Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask some questions on the actual report, the attachment, please.
Yes, your questions.
On page 4. Down the bottom, the second last point, development control plan considered by council, and strategic and asset planning behind schedule, development of Southwest Rock structure plan to commence late 2020. My question is there any conflict with the state significant development, which is in that area? And I'm saying what's the powers here? And I don't understand it. That the state significant development has been declared over the saltwater area. How can we plan on it when the planning of that area is in the control of the state government?
General Manager to
Sorry.
Director Fish.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the action that the comment that's listed there is a action that is reflected within the 2021 operating plan in terms of development of the structure plan. That structure plan, I guess, will provide the overall guidance in terms of the future development of Southwest Rocks, and any development that that obviously comes in, whether that be of state significant development or that can be determined by council, would be assessed against that structure plan.
So just a moment. We seem to have it. No?
No, it's just dropped out.
It's just dropped out. Okay, Councillor Horville.
The other question I had, Madam Mayor, if I may, on page 10, it talks about delivery of curb and gutter replacement program at West Kempsey Keith Moses Crescent. That's at the top of the page. It's deferred, and it says project deferred from the 2019-20 program. Does this project have a rescheduling, or that hasn't yet been decided? Is there a date for it yet?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I'll take that on notice and provide the advice separate from the meeting.
Thank you, Director Fish.
There's just one thing that Councillor Morris.
I'd just like to ask what
Councillor Morris, you were asking a question.
I would just like to know what was discussed for the last few minutes, because my internet connection dropped out and I had to leave the meeting and come back in. I'm just curious as to what.
Thank you. Councillor Horville asked a couple of questions of Director Fish. Director Fish might just like to praise what he said.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The question's related to the link of, or with regard to state significant development within the Southwest Rocks area, and we're just referring to one of the items that was on page 4 from memory, which alludes to the future development of a structure plan within Southwest Rocks. And I just mentioned that any development, irrespective of whether it's state significant development or determined by council, would obviously consider that structure plan when developed.
Thank you. Councillor
comment before we go.
Councillor
Saul. Madam Mayor, just to commend the report and commend Director Mitchell and his staff and Miss Catherine, because again, this shows over time council has really come of its own. From the past reports from past councils to a modern day council, I commend the staff being professional and open and transparent. So again, Director Mitchell and to others, well done, and please convey my thanks for your excellent reporting. Thank you.
There was just one thing before I take Councillor Horville, who's either going to ask a question, but there's one thing I just didn't point out when I was introducing the report, that 84% of our adopted actions are completed or commenced or on target. And as I said, given the year we've had, that's a pretty damn good. That's pretty good. So, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have an amendment, if I may.
And your amendment?
All right, just a quibble a bit. I think it wasn't 87%, it was 88%, Madam Mayor. It's much more successful than you put. My amendment is...
I couldn't read my own writing.
Number one, it's a 2-point amendment. Notes the progress achieved in delivering the 2019-20 operational plan. Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. It dropped out there. And number 2, that the exception report 2021 include all items in the exception report 2019-20 which have not been commenced or completed for update.
have a seconder?
What was that point 2?
That the exception report for 2021, that's next year's one, include all items in the exception report 2019-20, which have not been commenced or completed for update.
Do you
There won't be
want
any.
to make a comment, Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's up to council to determine whether they wish to adopt the amendment that Councillor Horville's done. Council has adopted an operating plan. The exception report that we'll have will actually relate to the actual operating plan as adopted by council. Some of those things that may have been deferred may not be in the new operating plan.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, Mr. General Manager.
So therefore, we would not be reporting on them because they're not actually in council's adopted.
Yeah, I just like to keep them on. So I'm looking for a seconder still.
It's lapsed. There's no seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We've got the report. Is there any dissent on the report? Do you wish to have right of reply before you've got your light about to go on?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Again, thank you to Director Mitchell and Catherine Parker and the rest of the team for putting this report together. It's really nice to reflect on what we've achieved over the last year, despite drought, bushfires, COVID-19. I think we're all quite impressed with this list. And the other thing, it's great to see that we've achieved some projects that have been on councils. We've been talking about at council meetings for 8 years, like the toilets at Bat Creek. So thank you so much to council and the community for working together. It's a great result.
Thank you. Any dissent on the recommendation? No dissent. It's been passed unanimously. 9.8, the delivery program progress report. Thank you, Councillor Shields. It's been seconded by Councillor Patterson. No one's got anything to say. Councillor Horville.
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment.
And the amendment is?
I'm just sending it through now to Mr. Thorogood. Hopefully he's got it. It just adds to what's there and gives more information. The amendment is that Council notes the progress in this 6-monthly report on the delivery program 2017-2021, with 88% of the 116 actions either commenced, completed or achieved. That's my amendment, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? There's no seconder, that's lapsed. We're back to the original recommendation. Do I have any dissent on the original recommendation?
I speak against it, please.
I need a speaker for it. There's no speaker for it. There's no need.
Well, I still have right.
Dissent?
Madam Mayor.
Is there any dissent on the recommendation?
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes?
With no one speaking in favour of it, the person putting the motion, this is my point of order, would technically have spoken in favour of it and then let the right to speak lapse. So I'm speaking against the motion, and I should be allowed to speak against it, Madam Mayor.
Technically, that's correct. You can speak against the fact that we're noting the progress report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a great report, and I think in our motions, that's why I moved the amendment, we should be specifying that there's a great success by the present council staff in achieving the delivery program. And that's why we should not just note things, but we also should be very clear on why we're noting them. The achievements were only a part of what they have done. There was achievements and they were commenced and completed. So there's 3 different areas that weren't specified in this motion. So that's why I'm speaking against it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any dissent on any speakers for? Do you wish the right of reply, Councillor Shields?
I just have a question. would our communication staff be communicating that to the community?
Yes, they certainly would be.
Thank you.
And actually, I might note that throughout the last 6 months when projects have been completed, that our communication staff do an amazing job of actually getting those projects out really regularly to the community on an ongoing basis through our social media and working with Ruby and the others at the Argus as well.
Thank you. Any dissent on the recommendation? It's been passed unanimously. Thank you, Council. Moving on to item number 9.9. There's a recommendation that I have a mover. Thank you, councillors. Who moved it? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams. So it's been moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Williams. Right. Councillor Hawthorne.
I have an amendment, Madam Mayor.
And the amendment is?
Three points in the recovery program. Number one, Council notes the information in this report. Point two, the General Manager is to communicate to staff Council thanks and commendation for their outstanding work in enabling such achievements as found in this recovery report. Three, the Council thanks the General Manager for his excellent leadership and work in this Shire's bushfire crisis recovery program. That's my motion, Madam Mayor. Amendment.
Councillor Patterson, do you want to incorporate that into your?
Not really, Madam Mayor. No, I think the recovery update description, the recovery update's sufficient, and I myself would like to once again thank Council and
you can't speak to it. I just asked you. Were you happy to incorporate, and you said no, that you didn't want to incorporate.
Yeah, no,
so, thank you, Councillor Horville's got an amendment. So, do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Morris put his hand up. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Bad things happen elsewhere. It's a bit like what's happening with COVID. It's not going to happen in Kempsey Shire. It's happening elsewhere. Bad things do happen here, and the bad thing that happened in November, and starting on the 8th especially, was the tremendous bushfire carnage of our Shire. Since that time, we've got this recovery program in place, and as specified by the General Manager and staff over time, and just in the output from staff, we know they have done an amazing job in servicing the needs of our Shire community. I'm saying that we should put into words in our motions the fact that we recognise what the staff have done, and we recognise what the General Manager has done in leading this team of staff who have done an amazing job. And that's why I think my amendment should be supported, because we need to thank people when they do outstanding work. And all those staff that are still working from home under COVID, they have been thanked as well. But in this regard, in the recovery program, it's, as the General Manager said, an example to other areas of the state that have been affected. And we're an exemplar. And so the exemplar comes about because of hard work from teamwork of staff. We should thank the staff. We should thank the General Manager for his role.
Would you like to speak against it? In actual fact, I am. And I think normally I would be the last person to vote against this amendment. And part of the reason is the council put up their reports that the information be noted. I think that is what the report says. And we thank our staff and we acknowledge our staff in our actions and in the way we treat them. And that is really important. And whilst it's a hard thing to do to vote against thanking somebody, and I acknowledge that I do thank, and I've said that in words, I think that council meetings are here for us to make the decisions of council. And sometimes we put things in to say thank you, but if we do that, we have to do that for everything that we do. So I will be voting against the amendment. Do I have any speakers for the amendment? Okay. I'm going to, any dissent on the amendment? The amendment has been lost. We now go back to the original motion.
Madam Mayor, could I hear what the voting was? I couldn't see it, please. Oh, there,
Councillor Horval.
yeah, it's up on the screen. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Microphone. We now move under. I now put the motion. Any dissent on the motion?
Which one are we dealing with now, Madam Mayor?
That the information be noted.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. That's been passed unanimously. 9.10 is the quarterly report. We do have a recommendation. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Second.
And it's been seconded by Councillor Saul. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, your question is?
The Matters and Progress report has been renamed to Action List. Would it have been possible for Action List to be kept as Matters in Progress? Is there some technical problem that must have it as an action list? Can it still be called Matters in Progress?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's actually set up in the system calling an action list. We'd actually manually have to change that each meeting to actually do that. So it's actually tried to be set up so it's actually efficient to set up and run each month to provide, or quarter to provide it to the councillors.
I have a question, Chair. Chair, a question.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, could I ask Director Mitchell a question on this report with the magnificent grants status summary and the millions of dollars the council's garnered from the state and federal government through grants? Is it? Would I be right to say that we've virtually achieved 100% on like everything we've asked for? We've got. Is that right to say that from looking at the list?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Baxter, the summary that's attached to the quarterly report includes those grants that have been successful. That's the first part of it, and the status of those. The second page includes those grants that have been applied for and waiting for a response, but also those ones where we've been unsuccessful.
All right.
And so, you know, if you were to look back, there have been grants, obviously, where we have been unsuccessful and they've been listed and reported quarterly to council. We have been successful in gaining a lot of grants, but there are some, for various reasons, which have been unsuccessful.
We just seem to be having a very high success rate. Would it be right to say our success rate is higher than previous years?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I'm just going to make a comment. That's because we've got excellent staff doing excellent applications and knowing what they're doing. Okay. Any other question? Councillor Morris, then Councillor Horval.
Just a couple of questions, Madam Mayor. In relation to the items in the project completion reports, as I raised last night, there are 3 reports specifically where the current budget, the current expenditure, the commitments and the variations do not add up. All of the other matters covered in that do add up. And as an example, there's one on page 28, which is the Southwest Rocks Road River rehabilitation. 100,000 is the budget, 75,000 417 is the current expenditure. 29,929 are the commitments to complete it, which add up to considerably more than 100. But the variation is zero. There's another one where the variation is there's inconsistencies in those two figures, and the examples are the projects that commence on page 7, page 21, and page 28. Can we either have those brought back to a future meeting with corrected figures, or have an explanation as to why there is variance across those projects? That's my first question.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. As explained last night, Councillor Morris, just in relation to the variation item that's in the last column within the format of that report, I will be amending the format of this report to make it absolutely clear and to allow for some better consistency and visibility in terms of what those numbers mean. As I mentioned, there's two ways of looking at the variation. One is the variance between the current expenditure and the approved budget, and then the second one would relate to, variations to the works that have occurred through the works on site that have resulted in costs that were unexpected, either up or down. And that's probably the reason why there's some differences in what you see in terms of the variation column. So we will edit the format of that and ensure that it's obviously consistent going forward. And happy to, provide some commentary on each of those reports for you outside of the meeting on notice, if you would like.
Okay. The other one is in the action list. The action list specifically on page 21 in relation to 600 Macleay Valley Way makes the comment that council staff met with proponent to discuss the draft planning agreement. Negotiation is progressing. That comment was made on the 6th of May. Has there been any further progress in relation to that matter? Since the 6th of May?
Thank you, Director.
At the top of that item, you'll see a comment as of the 27th of the 7th. That's on page 20 of the attachment, and it says that the current gateway determination issued on the 22nd of January has extended the time frame to determine this LEP amendment to 3rd of November 2020.
Okay, so the comment at the top, so they don't go, all the rest go in alphabetical order. Sorry, I missed that one at the top. So has there been any further progress with the proponent and the draft planning agreement? Because that comment makes no mention of that. It just says there's been an extension of the time to determine this LEP. Makes no comment in relation to the negotiations with the planning agreement. Just curious how the negotiations with the planning agreement are progressing.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the planning agreement is still being drafted. It will need to be reported to council to go on public exhibition once completed, which I would expect should be within the next couple of months.
I'd just also like to note that the comment on page 26 in regard to the councillor tour of the Macleay Valley Coast Holiday Parks says has been scheduled for August 2020. That has been cancelled. Has a revised date been determined yet, and when is that likely to occur?
It's noted that that was cancelled after this was completed, and there hasn't been a new date set yet. We are waiting to see what happens with COVID.
Okay. There is another one which I just have to find in the action list. The tennis court at Stewart's Point, the negotiation of the new lease. How is it progressing? Because there was no comment after May, unless equally there's one up at the top that I missed.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Morris, my recollection from when I reviewed this report a couple of weeks ago was that there was a comment included up the top in relation to that particular item, similar to the first item that you raised today. I'm just trying to find it in the report.
It's on page 27. The standing governance review of committees and membership is being undertaken prior to entering into future leases.
Okay, so in future we should look at the comment at the top, not at the bottom, shouldn't we? Or is it going to be reverted to that they'll be progressive alphabetical in the future?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, we are trying to get them all at the bottom, but as the individual staff have access to actually complete this, we've still got a little bit of work to do in training the staff to get it all placed in at the bottom so that they do run in date order.
Yeah, okay. Standard governance review. So the licence agreement still hasn't been finalised, so there's been no engagement with the leasee at this stage.
I'd say yes to the first part, but I wouldn't say there's been no engagement with the leasee at this point.
There's been no engagement in regard to the new lease agreement then, I should say. There's been engagement with him, but not in relation to the new lease agreement.
No.
Yeah. Okay, that's the only questions I've got.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While we're on the action list, if I may, Madam Mayor, on page 48, it talks about fixing local road grant announcements, and it says that council accepted, we have the $2 million for the rehabilitation of South West Rocks Road. It then talks about $935,000 for rural road heavy patching and resealing within the Kempsey Shire. We're still waiting, according to Director Fish, we're still waiting formal notification for transport, via Transport for New South Wales. Project allocation adjustments shall be made at the first quarterly review per resolution. Is there a list for that $935,000 of where the work will be undertaken to expend that money, or did that list have to go in with the grant application?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. The $935,000 for the rural road heavy patching and resealing program. The grant funding that's been obtained will be used for the heavy patching component, and that is across a variety of rural roads. So they were nominated within the grant application. From memory, there'd be probably of the order of about 15 roads that were part of that, and that was informed by an inspection of all our rural sealed roads in terms of higher priority heavy patching needs.
Would councillors be able to see that list, Mr. Fish? Thank you.
Yes, that could occur.
Thank you very much. Also, Director Fish, you might be able to answer this one, I'm not sure, or maybe the General Manager. In the quarterly KPI report, it says that there's a PMO to be appointed. I'm not too sure what a PMO is.
It's a project management office.
Okay, and how's that going, or what's the timetable for that, Mr. General Manager?
The office is already established. We have 3 staff operating from that, and they're the ones that are actually driving things such as our financial sustainability program, our internal change management, and also the IT Vision project.
Thank you very much. My other question, if I may, is on the grant status summary. Again, I'll support what Councillor Baxter said. We're certainly getting a lot of things done. In page 2, I think it is, of that grant status summary, it talks about the Crescent Head Aquatic Facility amenity block that is being installed or is about to be enabled. We got the total $320,000 there in that grant. So just wondering, why was it so successful and in getting it so well, and why did it have to be at a mountable? Would it have just been as efficient to have one constructed by a local builder?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that funding was guaranteed. So the second part of your question, Councillor Horville, we obviously, as part of that process, have run a tender process in terms of to award that contract, and that was obviously gone through a full process around from a procurement perspective. Not quite sure if that's answered your question on what the intention of your question was.
Well, the intention is, could we have employed a local builder to do it for the same or a lesser price, or is the demountable the cheaper option?
So of all of our procurements on a best value for money basis, Councillor Horville, and procurements like that are advertised. So only respondents who respond to particular tenders will be able to be used to deliver those works.
Okay.
Well, if I just clarify something too for councillors' understanding, it's actually not a demountable toilet, it's actually a modular toilet, is my understanding of the way they describe it. And they're basically prefabbed and able to be put in and installed very, very quickly.
Yeah, so, Mr. General Manager, it's not something that can be taken away and placed somewhere else at some point in the future. It's kind of locked in.
I don't imagine the council would want to take away the public toilets from the Crescent Head pool that they've been waiting. I know Renee and Mike Mason have been waiting along with the community out there for these toilets for many, many years.
Then we would have a demonstration.
Yes. Will there be an official opening, Madam Mayor, of the toilet block?
That hasn't been decided as yet.
Thank you very much. That was done in jest, that question. Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion.
And the amendment is?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ensure it can be done. That change the recommendation to the third dot point. It says the action list is noted and rename Matters in Progress report from now on.
And that's now up on the board. A seconder? It's lapsed due to no seconder.
Rather than seconding it, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, councillor.
And that is, can council's media team make it clear to the community that what was the Matters in Progress is now called an action list? Because I think it makes little difference in the long run if the community becomes aware that we're not calling it a Matters in Progress anymore, but we're calling it an action list. It's more about getting the name change known across the community that may look at these matters.
They use a capital A in that too.
Yes.
And on that basis, if we have the education so that the community is aware that it was what was the Matters in Progress, I don't think it matters what it's called, as long as people become familiar with the new name.
Thank you. So the amendment's lapsed, so it's not there, and we've gone back to the original recommendation that's been moved and seconded by Councillor Baxter and seconded by Councillor Saul. Okay, any dissent on the recommendation? It's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I think the next one was passed in the consensus. So we go to 11.12. There is a recommendation that the information be noted. Thank you, Councillor Shields. Seconded. Councillor Baxter.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Horville.
I think you misspoke. It's 9.12, isn't it?
Yes. Sorry.
12.12.
Cash and investments.
Thank you. Could I ask a question, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
It's on the actual document that's been put together, Statement of Cash and Investments. And on the last page, it's got the accrued investment income versus the budget. And we're already a little bit behind. The expected budget, can I be clear here with Director Mitchell or Mr. General Manager, those estimates or the blue lines were based on a guess that the interest rates would not move, or was it based on the expected expansion of the economy to give that increase to the return on interest?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Horville, those, as with all budgets and all line items in a budget, they're based on best information that's available at the time. And so in relation to our investment income, that was the same. So when the budget was being pulled together, assumptions were made at that time in terms of cash holdings and what potentially rates would be achieved in relation to those investments, and as a result, that's how the investment income was determined. They are and always will be estimates, and it's impossible to get those to have the actuals to be to exactly line up with what's been budgeted. We'll always have variation just because of assumptions that are made. The budgets are done at a point in time, and as particular variables change, in this case, whether it's the investments that we're holding or the underlying interest rates, you'll get variation between actuals and budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell, or Director Mitchell. The other question is, we didn't take loans out in the previous year. We're talking finances, I guess, and that is listed as being a cost to our return on investments. I don't understand how that works financially.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. So again, the assumption when the budget would have been pulled together, Councillor Horville, was that those loans would have been taken out prior to the end of June, which would have meant that we would have had those cash proceeds, if you like, from those loans would have been sitting in our bank account, and therefore would have been accruing interest on those. To the same token, we would have actually been paying interest on the loan themselves, and so the fact that we didn't take those loans out before the end of June meant that our projected cash and investments balance that the investment income was based on was lower, or is lower than what was actually assumed within the budget.
Thank you for that explanation. Very clear. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Just as an extension on that, because the conclusion of the report makes it quite clear that we've affected the investment balances because of not taking out the loan. What would be equally the benefit to council by not having to pay the interest on those loans? Surely there's a net positive for council budget-wise as a result of not taking out those loans, even though the conclusion seems to indicate that it's a net loss to council.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct, Councillor Morris, which is what I alluded to in my last response to council.
Yeah, but the report indicates that it's a detriment as opposed to a positive, and it really shouldn't be relayed in my mind as a positive or a comment at the end. This has resulted in a greater reduction.
Councillor Morris, can I just interrupt here? Director Mitchell was answering the question, and you did speak over the top of him. So can I please ask that you don't do that, and that Councillor Mitchell has...
I've been promoted. The
demoted, I would call it. Director Mitchell, if you would like to continue.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so Councillor Morris, what I was trying to say was that, yes, that is correct, and that's what I had mentioned in my response to Councillor Horville. This paper is about our investments, and the graph that's on page 3 of the attachment to this report only talks about investment income. It doesn't talk about borrowing costs. So the comment that's been included there is only in relation to the information that's been included within this report. But yes, correct. And as I mentioned before, there would be an offsetting amount that would have been flowing through in terms of borrowing costs. And in fact, because of the margin, the borrowing cost would be greater. The impact in terms of our borrowing cost would be greater than what the impact is on our investment income. But this report is only referring to investment income.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Okay. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? It's been passed unanimously. Thank you. (10.1), there is a notice of motion. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to move that council a 1.5 metre physical or social distancing requirement, or where this action is not possible or reasonably practical, that a mask be worn. I know that what council...
Before you speak to it, I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Horville.
I appreciate that what council does is strictly in accordance with the public health order. I note that there is less separation than 1.5 metres with some people sitting around the council chamber today. I also note that the comment about council appropriately practicing social distancing was not made by yourself at the start of this meeting today. I know that there is no known cases of COVID-19 in the Macleay Valley, and hopefully it will stay that way, although we are not guaranteed that that will be the case. And I believe we need to be setting the highest level of example to our community and encouraging as many people as possible to wear masks where they're not able to maintain an appropriate social distancing. And I believe that that messaging is important in all aspects of council, whether it be photos of activities, and I know most of the ones recently have clearly shown that separation. I believe we need to be mirroring the messaging that is being provided by the state government and the Premier and the Minister for Health and the public and the Chief Medical Officer to encourage, where social distancing is not possible, to wear a mask. It will be too late when we get an outbreak or if we get an outbreak in community, which hopefully will never happen, to suddenly get people to switch their ideas. We need to instill that requirement into the community by demonstrating leadership wherever we possibly can.
I don't normally do this, but as a councillor, I'm going to foreshadow a motion that and I'll read it. I think I've sent it through. That Kempsey Shire Council continues to follow the current COVID-19 public health orders and manage risk to staff and other people in accordance with the New South Wales Government work health and safety laws, and that they are updated as restrictions and advice changes.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
It's foreshadowed because it's different to what the councillor has put, so it will only become a motion if this one is not accepted. Excuse me.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me? Sorry. You all right?
I need to go and get tested. Just a sec. So that's part of my foreshadowed motion, and in doing that, I'm going to speak against the recommendation, because the recommendation that we have here in front of us says that council implements. I will note, though, before I go on, that in our business papers it does say council meetings, and this is about council messaging, not council meetings. If we ask and adopt this recommendation, I'd like to ask the General Manager what implications this would have on the organisation. And it doesn't have a time frame, so it says where the action is not possible or reasonably practical that a mask be worn. Could I just ask the General Manager what would happen if we accepted what the recommendation is?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it has a range of implications. On face value, it appears very simple, but it does become a problem. I know where it's been mandated to wear masks, such as in Victoria, there's a whole range of exemptions they actually put on that. So when you're obviously when you're eating, when you're actually exercising, there's a whole range of things. This doesn't actually allow for any of those exemptions to be put in place. It's just a thing that we actually do that, although it does say we're reasonably practical. What we have been doing here is, and probably just a little bit of a very quick history, the continuity management team met in March, early March. It actually declared the pandemic as a formal event under our business continuity plan prior to the federal government announcing it as a pandemic or declaring it a pandemic. The CMT met initially weekly, now continues to meet fortnightly. The executive leadership team has met daily. We now meet 3 times a week to actually monitor all this. There's very regular communication with our staff, and changes as and when necessary are actually made on a proactive basis wherever possible to ensure that as an organisation we are meeting and setting an example in relation to how we manage COVID-19. Physical distancing is one of those things, which is wherever practical we do actually practice that. Hand hygiene is another one, so we actually provide hand sanitizer to our staff. The vehicles, we've reduced the number of people travelling in our vehicles and provide wipes so that they can actually be wiped down when they're changing. We've limited the number of changes of staff from team to team. And we've also, obviously, from our admin staff, located most of those who are working from home arrangements. So we're doing all those sorts of things. This is something, I guess, in many ways we're actually already doing. But to say that a mask must be worn, at this point, that's not the advice.
Councillor, I'll take Councillor Morris. If you've got a question.
It's not a question, Madam Mayor. As a result of the comment in relation to the period of implementation of this, I'd like to make a change, and that is to add at the end of it with change this full stop to a comma, and then add, whilst such messaging is provided to the community by the New South Wales State Government. So I'm saying that the wearing of a mask should only be applicable when the state government is forwarding that messaging to the broader New South Wales community.
Councillor,
it's about not strictly following the public health order, but probably going a little bit further than that in making sure we get accurate messaging or similar messaging to the community as what the state government is providing by media.
Thank you. Councillor Horval?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Just a moment, I'll make sure that we've got that comma additional remarks. Councillor Horval?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Complacency has been defined in the media as the idea that bad things happen elsewhere. As I said earlier, bad things happen elsewhere until we have a bushfire in the Kempsey Shire, and then the bad thing happens here. At the moment, we have a highway called the Pacific Motorway streaming through Kempsey with up to 10,000 vehicles a day, and many of them stopping at the Slim Dusty Interchange Service Centre. It only takes one person who's got COVID to stop there, and it then gets spread there and comes into our community. We need to take preemptive action, and this is what this motion is, the way I read it. It's a message to our community. This is serious. And yes, for one councillor who said this before, I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I'm definitely not. I'm a whole lot of things that I'm not. But I can read, and I read that we've got a message from the state government, and it says from the New South Wales Chief Health Officer, Dr. Kerry Chant, the use of face masks, indoor settings where physical distancing is hard to maintain, goes on, you should be using a mask. And I look at the council meeting today, and I've seen people standing next to each other. And as you would know, Mr. General Manager and Madam Mayor, I wrote an email to you saying I'm concerned that if either of you have picked up COVID-19 and you could be asymptomatic, that means you don't know you've got it. You'd be passing it on to the other person, and within weeks would be without a general manager and a mayor. Wearing masks, if you're more than less than 1.5 metres away, it drops the incidence of you getting it or passing it on. And Kempsey Council cannot be without either of you. You're valuable people and have a valuable role. Councillors, not so much. But for the rest of us, we need you to continue in that role. So I would suggest that wearing masks when you're less than 1.5 metres, as we are in this council meeting, or you are in that council meeting room, for up to 3.5 hours, you definitely need to be wearing a mask if you're less than 1.5 metres. And not only is it necessary, it's what the motion is. We need to put the message out. Now, I've been into Aldi, been into Coles, and I've been into Woolworths in the last week. Each time, I have seen less than half a dozen people wearing the mask. Woolworths mandated that their staff should wear it. About 10% of staff are not wearing it in Woolworths. The message is not getting through that it could happen here. We need to give the message as a council and take the leadership role that it is something that's going to be here for the long term, as you all know, until a vaccine. So for the long term, we need to put the message out that we take it seriously and our leaders need to take it seriously. And that's what councillors and the rest of the council staff appearing on YouTube at the moment. We should be setting the standard and giving the message out. Give the message to our community. Wearing a mask when you're less than 1.5 metres. And that's what this motion's all about. My fellow councillors, I'd hope you would consider this and realise that we need to set a leadership role.
General Manager.
Just, as I've said before, it's totally up to the council what they decide on this, but let's be very clear on what the New South Wales Chief Health Officer, Dr. Jerry Chant, has actually said regarding the wearing of masks. Dr. Chant recommends wearing a mask in the following circumstances. If it is hard to maintain a 1.5 metres of physical distance from others in areas where there has been community transmission, where in high-risk indoor areas such as public transport, supermarkets, shops, churches and other places of worship, where caring for or servicing vulnerable people, or in working in a cafe, restaurant, pub, club or other high-risk indoor areas. While wearing a mask in any of these settings is not currently mandated, it is highly recommended. Clearly, a range of things that council do, but the overwhelming majority of things do not fit that. There are a couple of areas where they are, and that's where we have strongly recommended to our Visitor Information Centre staff that they wear masks, and the masks are provided. And we have masks provided in our offices for the staff for them to wear should they wish. And obviously our outdoor staff have masks where they require them as well. And we have masks here in the chamber for the councillors and the staff should they choose to provide it. So it is up to the councillors what they choose to resolve from this. But let's be clear on what Dr. Chant has said. It's not to wear them if you're in 1.5 metres. There's a range of other conditions around that.
Thank you, General Manager. Is there any dissent on the motion?
Madam Mayor, question?
Yes, question.
I can't see my fellow councillors, Madam Mayor. Are any of them wearing a mask at this time?
No one in the chambers.
I can't see, thank you.
No one in chambers today are wearing a mask. Is there any dissent on the motion? Yes, we've got to do them. This is the motion. There is a foreshadowed motion to come if this motion is defeated. The motion is defeated, so I now put the foreshadowed motion.
Madam Mayor, could I hear what the voting was, please?
It'll be on the screen very shortly. It's now on the screen, I believe. No, it's not. It's now on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much.
There is a foreshadowed motion. I've had a second. Councillor Patterson has seconded it. We just turned the air conditioner off. That's fine.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Would you accept a small amendment to yours or add at the end for the duration of this pandemic?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Now that I'm over the tickling in my throat coughing fit because the air conditioning's gone off, I don't think there's any more that we need to really say about it unless there's any further questions. I put the any dissent on the recommendation? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go on to questions, I think, which are, we'll start with Councillor Morris.
No questions today.
Councillor Hormel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a number of questions and I've just emailed them through. Here they are. In regard to the leasing of the airport terminal, why were tenders rejected for non-compliance? Next, what maintenance issues are there with the 4 Kempsey Shire Council pools, and what is the plan for rectification? Next, would the present lease for the Kempsey Airport Terminal be able to be terminated by Council if an airline offered to commence regular passenger transport? Next one, what was the Council income from the June auction sale of the 13 Crescent Head cabins at the Kempsey Shire Council Tourist Park? Finally, what is the number of leases at Kempsey Airport where the leasee is operating more than one aircraft which do not pay landing charges and therefore are not subject to the fees and charges for landing fees for the second or more aircraft? And this is the final one. Does the stormwater drain commencing at the northwest corner of the Kempsey Regional Sale Yards, which would have water inflow from the yards and goes northwest across Sale Yard roads to discharge into a paddock, have any possibility of introducing wastewater into Christmas Creek? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Baxter. Councillor Shields. Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first question being, what is the average cost per rate notice of Council's environmental levy in 2021? Anyway, second question, please. Do we have a proposed completion date for the renewal of Sale Yards Road Bridge on Sale Yards Road, Christmas Creek? And finally, I was approached yesterday for this question. Can consideration be given for an airport hangar leasee to have their hangar lease drawn up using local solicitors? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Councillor Williams. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 questions. Thank you. What reason do council or contractors add lime powder to road base for? Second question, what extra cost does this add to the gravel price per metre? Third question, 2 Crescent Head road jobs completed by council, 1 Gowings Hill Road job. I'm speaking of here the road works where it's been resealed. So 2 Crescent Head jobs and 1 Gowings Hill road job. Have these had lime added to them? Thank you. And sorry, there's a finish to that. Have these had lime added to them, and what extra cost? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's it. We now move into confidential. Do I have thank you, Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor Shields in actual fact. So we're now moving into confidential. got to get the screen on so that we can read that, and then that ends the council meeting.
So in confidential or closed session, there were 2 resolutions taken by council in regards to report 11.1 legal matters. It was resolved that the information be noted. And in regards to item 11.2, Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes, 15th July 2020, it was resolved that council note the draft meeting minutes from the Audit and Risk Committee, 15 July 2020.
The meeting is now closed. Thank you.